Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Happy holidays. Thank you for joining our YouTube live special event today. Brian Tarian here from the Disability Digest. And I say special event because one of my holiday gifts for you is to have industry expert, Attorney James Mitchell Brown, with us here today. Thank you for joining. Jim?
Pleasure to be here.
Yes, and Nadine, Philip, I appreciate you serving as my elves today. So we wanted to have Jim back. Two reasons. We're going to talk about listing number 1 today. Coming back, you get it, the back thing. Maybe not. But most importantly, Jim is super qualified to answer questions about what it takes to get your benefits approved and keep them for anything related to the back and the spine, among other things, but that's what we're going to concentrate on today. But also today, there's been a lot of questions and concern that people have expressed about their disability benefits and what's going to go on with the new administration in 2025 and what's the real deal and what's not. And Jim also is very well connected with what goes on with Social Security and the benefits. So you can ask those questions today. Now, we have a different format today for your questions that you have, and you're welcome to send them in via chat, which you've always been able to do. But you will have a Zoom room link put into the YouTube and the Facebook chat that you can join this room that we're in and ask your question directly. Question about getting approved, a lot of questions about CDRs, about benefits in general. We hope that you stay in our area of expertise for Social Security disability benefits so that we can help you. So that's what we have on track. And then, at the very end today, I have a special Christmas gift for everybody, holiday gift that I want to share. So that's
the most exciting part for today's video.
Lots of pressure. Lots of pressure. That's the other reason why I have Jim here. I might end up with one of those OIG things again. So
Good. We'll knock it out in no time.
Perfect. So let's get into it. I'm going to share my screen and put a graphic up. Oh, one other thing I just want to mention. Philip Price is here, runs this Facebook group, which is one of the most popular, rapid growing Facebook groups to support disability applicants. We have a working relationship with Philip. There's general support provided in this group, and the Disability Digest provides the how-to. So I opened my mouth a while ago and I said, Philip, you're getting close to around 10,000 members. When we get to 10,000, let's do some prize and drawings. Well, we're at 9.9. So this will be our last event for the year. So when we're back next year, I fully expect it'll be over 10,000 and Philip will have the prize winners, and we'll do some drawing and give away some gift cards and other goodies, right? That's exciting, Philip. Good for you.
Yeah. Yes. We might hit 10,000 before the end of the show.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So a lot of times we get questions about, do I qualify for this? Do I qualify for degenerative disc disease, herniated discs? I just had a back operation. I'm not able to work. And Social Security has these categories that are called listings. And what I commonly hear from people, and Jim, this is directed at you, is that, geez, you know what? I have like spinal stenosis, and I see that it should be no problem. I should meet a listing, right? So there's a difference between the condition and meeting this listing, and meeting this listing is kind of like playing Monopoly, where you pass go and you get your $200, like it's a speedy apparent approval. So I wanted to have Jim explain some of the key criteria that people are going to need to qualify to meet this listing. And this visual here covers the general range of where you could have challenges that meet this listing. How did I do for an intro, Jim, with my question?
That was a great intro.
Okay.
The first most important thing, which I've said almost every show I've been on, is a diagnosis is not a disability. And we all get calls saying, I have spinal stenosis, or I have a herniated disc, or I have a leg amputated. And the listings say that qualifies. It does qualify with the caveat that you have to have proof of how it affects you. You have to have proof of your age, your education, the work you've done in the past, along with your disability. If you meet a listing, you almost always get benefits. The problem is Brian or I could meet a listing and still be able to do our jobs. I couldn't sit as long as I sit. I couldn't walk to the copier and the printer as often as I do or as easily as I do, but I could do my job. So meeting the listing means you have to first have a diagnosis. You then have to have objective findings of that diagnosis. There are people who call me all the time and say, the MRI showed I have 3 herniated discs and degenerative disc disease. An image isn't a disability. You then need a physician to say what that image means and how it affects you. Those herniated discs cause pain radiating into your legs or your arms. They cause muscle weakness in your spine, in your legs, in your arms. It has to show what it is. There are people with a leg and an arm amputated who still can do work, but that's where you need the physician to say, well, they have a leg and an arm amputated and they need to have a rollator to be able to get around because the prosthesis isn't that good. And therefore, one hand's on the rollator. They don't have another hand to do anything with. So therefore, they can't work. The physician doesn't have to say you can't work. The physician has to say what your limitations are and what your restrictions are. Going along in this manner, you have to have medical proof to show what the problems are. If you say the image says I have a herniated disc and I have severe pain and I can only lift 5 pounds, and you get somebody who knows you to write a letter supporting all of that, it's not enough. You need competent medical proof from a physician. And it can be your family physician, it can be an orthopedic or neurosurgeon, a physical medicine doctor, a chiropractor, a pain management doctor, but the records have to be sufficient to support what you're saying your subjective complaints are. If you're just saying it without the medical proof, they're going to turn you down. The spine can affect every part of your body. It can affect walking, sitting, standing, reaching, pushing, pulling, but you need the doctor to support that. If the doctor says because of this spine injury, you can't lift over 10 pounds, you can't reach overhead, you can only reach in front of you 20% of the day, that you can only walk 15 minutes out of every hour, that you can only sit 20 minutes out of every hour, which means you're going to be in a lying down position at least half of every day, then you have proof that you need. But without a physician supporting those allegations, you don't have proof.
So you need the diagnosis, and you need to have in that diagnosis, like the imaging that justifies the limitations.
Correct. And it's interesting. that even if there's an amputation, they want an image showing there's an amputation,
Oh, really? That one I
which
wasn't familiar with.
it's bizarre, but yes, they asked for that. So you take an X-ray of the arm that's not there anymore.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I scrolled through some of the listing while we were speaking earlier. What I was looking for is there's a chart in here that I'm trying to locate about. I had some questions on them in hopes that I can find it. I mean, as you may see, as I go through this, the listing is extensive. And I seem to keep going by it, but there is I want to say it's a range of motion or degree of severity chart. I don't know why I can't find it, but is that familiar to you? Oh, here it is. I found it.
Okay, pop it up.
All right, so this is in the beginning of the listing. And
okay, that's your muscle strength.
okay.
And 0 means you have no use of that muscle. So when you're gripping, your grip strength is 0, that means that you can't grip anything. If your grip strength is 3, that's fair, not good, not bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I had a hearing several months ago with a client who had crush injuries to both hands. His grip strength in both hands was 0. And the judge said, well, how are you holding your phone for this telephone hearing? And he said, I'm not. My lawyer sent me a phone stand and my wife put the phone in the phone stand and she put the speaker on and I'm just talking into it. I'm not holding anything.
Oh, good answer.
And the judge said, Mr. Brown, do you send a phone stand to every client? I said, on every telephone or video hearing, I do. And he said, well, you got me there, because he really thought he had this man lying about grip strength.
So when you say a phone stand, is it something like as simple as this phone stand?
Yes.
All
yeah,
right.
because if you have to hold your phone for a 45-minute hearing, it's painful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. All right. So this is very helpful. And I want to pivot a little bit for those, not a little bit, but quite a bit, for those that are approved. And if they have a situation that has been, like the amputee, that is permanent, or some other less obvious condition that is permanent, what is your opinion on them having consistent updated imaging? I mean, it's not like it's going to get any better, like if you're an amputee, that's going to change.
You just need one.
You just need the one. Okay.
Yep, just show it.
Okay.
One thing I want to back up on. If you're using a cane, a rollator, a walker, anything like that, it has to be in your doctor's notes that that's necessary.
Right.
If you're using something like that and the doctor hasn't said you need it, they don't consider it as necessary.
Okay. Okay. Good. Good. Great. So we got treatment, diagnosis, and imaging. Now there are situations where I would expect there's imaging is not going to reveal the obvious, like if it's muscle related. Is there anything like that, or am I making that up?
No, it's very difficult to get disability for a soft tissue injury.
Yeah.
It's in there. You can get it, but you have to show why the soft tissue injury isn't healing, the severity of it, what it causes.
Mm-hmm.
If you're having severe spasm in your whole spine, and that spasm has lasted or is expected to last 12 or more months, and that spasm is causing numbness, weakness in your arms or legs, you might be able to prove it.
Okay.
In that situation, besides the medical report showing your limitations, I like to get a lay witness, usually just by a letter, to substantiate what you can't do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great. For those of you that are out there, thanks for joining. We're going to take some questions in a moment. You'll be able to put those in chat. Or there is a link that either has been or will be put in that you could actually join this Zoom room and speak to us directly and ask the expert that way. So that's good. So this is statistically the most common, maybe that's not, maybe common is it, most common condition for people getting approved for disability, right? So would you say it's that way in
It's
your
pretty
practice?
close with the psych listings too.
Is it? Okay. Okay. Yeah, so I've had people in the transportation business that have been driving truck and they have severe musculoskeletal, and being an over the road driver, they're just not able to do that anymore, and they've been doing it for a long time, so they're not really able to transition to anything else. So that's where this would be applicable for anybody out there that is, or nurses, right?
Right. It's interesting that nursing is considered light work in the Dictionary of Occupational Titles, and yet a nurse almost always has to lift at least 50 pounds and usually over 100 if they have to lift a patient.
It's hard work. Yeah,
Very hard. And on your feet all day.
exactly. And usually the shifts that they work are not a normal like 8 and done. And oftentimes they have to start super early. I know some nurses. So
Right.
yeah,
It's
that's
usually 10 or 12 hours.
right. Right. Yeah. That's good. Anything else that would be good for the audience to know on listing number 1?
The important thing is document what your impairments are.
Okay.
A lot of people with musculoskeletal issues take a half hour or longer to get out of bed in the morning. Keep track of that.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do when you get out of bed? It takes you a half hour to get out of bed when you wake up, and then you have to do exercises for a half hour. Keep track of what happens to you if you do something. If you take a walk for a half hour, how long do you have to sit and rest? If you vacuum your house, how long can you vacuum at one time before you have to rest?
Mm-hmm.
The same with cooking a meal, doing dishes. One of the interesting things is one of the questions is, can you cook your meals? And somebody says, I make breakfast. And a person at the state agency that makes the first 2 decisions figures, why can't they be a cook in a diner? Without realizing that breakfast in this house might be a Pop-Tart and a cup of coffee.
Right.
It's not really cooking.
Yeah.
So document how you sleep. If you have musculoskeletal pain, you're not sleeping well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Document that, but make sure you tell your physicians. I recommend that you write it all down and bring it to your doctor. And let the doctor have it in their records that you're sleeping poorly 3-4 hours a night at the most consecutively.
Mm-hmm.
That when you go to the bathroom, it's hard to get off the toilet. You need help in the shower. If you vacuum for 10 minutes, you have to sit down for 30 minutes. Get all of that in the doctor's notes. Because when the doctor puts it in their notes, it's as if the doctor knows it, not that you wrote it and gave it to them.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have that documented in the doctor's records, it buttresses your claim for what your limitations are.
Yeah, so if you think about the whole disability process, and I call this disability insurance, you need it when you're getting approved and after you're approved. If Social Security sees a diagnosis for degenerative disc disease or some other condition like that, and you've got the sit stand limitations 15, 20 minutes consistently, when Social Security comes through and they review those records, right? What you're pointing out is you're proving that you have a condition that's been diagnosed and you've got limitations that prevent you from doing your job. Boom.
Right. One of the things in that regard is keeping track of when you leave the house. If it's hard for you to leave the house, you can't work.
Mhm.
Stay-at-home jobs really don't count. answering a phone at home isn't considered substantial gainful employment in most instances, unless that was your full-time job for a long period of time before your disability. So if leaving the house is painful, if you only leave the house once a week to go visit your sister for an hour and then you have to go home, if getting out of the house is difficult, keep track of what happens when you leave the house. I've won some cases just by showing that this person can't leave their home.
Mm.
If you can't leave your home, you can't work.
That's true. Yeah, so I can see where a work at home job or special accommodations to do so could be challenging. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And can make you eligible for disability because those special accommodations aren't usually considered part of substantial gainful employment.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, good point. I see the questions piling in here.
All right.
So unless there's anything else on this, we'll pivot over to take some questions. I know, Philip, you have some lined up from your group. There's some in writing, and Nadine
Yes.
has the link I see that's been put out there, right? Okay, good. So let's just recap. You can submit your question via text. If you'd like to join the Zoom room and ask us live in person, an all new, never been done before format, then look for the link in the chat. So let's get on with it. We'll get some questions for you.
Okay.
And we typically go ladies first. So Nadine, would you like to start?
So while we're waiting for our guests to join us in Zoom, I do have a list of few questions here from the chat. So we have a question from RD. Once your initial claim is denied and reconsideration is submitted, how long would you think that will take? Actually, there are like three similar questions here about reconsideration.
Well, it depends what state you're in. If you're in Ohio, it will take about 3 to 4 months. If you're in Texas, it will take about 10 months. And those are probably the extremes. On a reconsideration, if you say there's no change in your condition, they're going to deny you pretty fast, though. When you're filing a reconsideration, you should be sure to tell them why your condition has gotten worse.
Okay.
That's the only way they really look at it.
I have a question on this, Jim. Are you drawing a similar wait time in a state that, for example, Ohio, if it's 3 months for an initial, it'll be 3 months for a reconsideration?
No, Ohio is about 6 to 7 months for an initial and 3 months for a reconsideration. But in Ohio, in almost every state, if you say your condition hasn't gotten worse, you'll get a recon denial in 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay. Okay. So let me ask it this way. Is there any connection between the wait time for an initial decision and a reconsideration decision, in your opinion?
Yeah, the longer your state takes to make an initial decision, the longer it will also take to make a recon decision.
Okay.
It's a matter of staffing. It's a matter of where the governor wants to divert the money that comes from Social Security to make these decisions. In some states, they will put it into a fund and spend it on other things and not spend it on disability the way they should.
Yeah, beautiful.
It's why Texas is the slowest in the country.
Yeah. Okay.
We have another question here from Jonathan Price. He said, I was wondering, how can someone do an appeal for overpayment?
Ooh.
Well, this is one of the shames of the commissioner was the best commissioner we've ever had, and he just resigned because of the election. He could have continued to serve for 3 more years, but felt the president should have the right to choose his own commissioner. He was about to change the overpayment rule to say if it wasn't the claimant's fault, that's all they'd have to prove. Now you still have to prove that it's not your fault and it's a hardship to repay it, or that causing you to repay it is against the meaning of the Social Security Act and against the good conscience of the act to make you repay it. It's a twofold, though. You first have to prove it wasn't your fault. I have somebody right now I represent who was overpaid $142,000. We have 9 letters he wrote to Social Security when he started working, telling them he was working, where he was working, how much he got paid, and they kept paying him Social Security anyways. So because of that, they all of a sudden told him he's been overpaid $142,000. The fault part will be easy to prove. The hardship to repay it's going to be difficult because he has a substantial earnings. I think we can prove it anyways, though. But overpayments are difficult to prove. The only saving part of it now is the most they can take out of your monthly check is 10%.
So Jim, we just have Whitney has joined us
Hi, Whitney.
and she's on her way in. We don't know her question. And this is a test, but I'm delighted that Whitney is our first participant. Whitney, can you hear us?
Hello, I can now. I was going through the whole setup thing.
Perfect.
Great.
Thanks for joining. You are live. It's wonderful to have you here. How can we help you?
Well, you guys are discussing today exactly my issues. So I filed for disability back in August, so I'm still in the waiting process. I'm in West Virginia, and it's usually about a 250-day wait. But I also had an MRI this past Wednesday that they discovered 2 herniated discs, the impinged nerves, things like that. So I was glad to sign in today and catch exactly what you guys were saying about that.
Well, we did this for you.
Yep.
Thank you.
When did you last work, Whitney?
I have actually been on short-term disability. I actually work for Cigna Healthcare. I process medical claims from home.
Okay.
And I last worked, I used up all my FMLA. So then the next step was short-term disability. And that actually just ran out last week. But I haven't
Okay.
worked since August.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're seeing an orthopedic surgeon or neurosurgeon for your spine?
Yes, a neurosurgeon at the Virginia Brain and Spine Center. They're the ones
Okay.
that ordered the MRI.
What city is that in?
Winchester, Virginia.
Oh, okay. I know a terrific spine surgeon in Morgantown. That's why I wondered.
Okay.
But have you given the doctor you're seeing all of your complaints,
Oh,
the
yes.
problems you're having?
Yeah, this has been going on for about 5 years for me.
Have you had an earlier MRI also?
I had another MRI before that, which was a cervical MRI, which also was abnormal.
So your spine's erect from top to bottom.
Oh, yes.
Okay. You should start keeping a diary of your
Okay.
days. Takes me X amount of time to get out of bed in the morning.
Right.
I don't cook anymore, or somebody washes the dishes for me. Whatever you can't do or whatever you're limited in doing, keep a record of.
Okay.
You had a home sedentary or less than sedentary job. You didn't do any heavy lifting, anything
Right.
like that. So how long can you sit at one time?
About 15 minutes, and then I've got to get up.
And how long do you get up for?
Probably about 15 minutes, and I got to sit down. I'm constantly up and down, up and down, up
Okay.
and down.
That's what you need to keep a record of. Because if you say I can only sit 15 minutes at a time, that's anecdotal to them. If you say, here's my log for the 3rd week in December, I had a Christmas dinner and I couldn't sit through it. I had to get up 4 times during dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is, so that you have some real documentation that's as it's happening. If you try and put it together later on, have they sent you the form yet about your activities of daily living?
Yes, the function report, I think it was called.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay. That's one of the most important forms you fill out, and people usually don't fill it out in enough detail. And that might be worth another show, Brian, just to talk about filling that form out.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
But the function report, if you just answer their questions, you're not giving them enough information. So when I help my clients fill that form out, I tell them to fill it out as best they can, and then we go over it. And everything is their answers, but there are things like, what can't you do now that you used to do before? And it's amazing how many people leave out the word work. I
right.
can't ride a bicycle. I can't walk very far. I can't do that. But they forget to say I can't work. So there's a lot of things. And that's a form that you need a lot of detail on. Have they asked if they can send you to a physician for another exam yet?
I just had that this past Friday. They sent me to an internist because I also have horrible high blood pressure, which my doctor's not been able to maintain.
I've had some people sent to a urologist for their back problems, so it's okay.
Oh, okay.
How long was your exam?
It was actually very thorough. I was impressed, probably 30 minutes, 35 minutes.
Did the doctor actually touch your spine?
He did.
Have you bend over and bend right and left?
Yep, walk on tiptoes, walk on heels, stretches, range of motion.
You got a legitimate exam. Did the doctor ask why you were filing for disability?
I don't think he did.
Okay, good. They're not supposed to, but some do. And then they say, this person doesn't have much wrong. They're just filing for disability because they want the money.
Right.
So when
That's
I
not my
tell
case.
people,
I'll actually make less.
of course you will. Everybody
Right.
does.
Everybody does.
When I've testified in Congress, I've always said, nobody ever wants to call me.
Right.
5 years ago, you would have never thought you'd be applying for disability.
Oh, exactly.
But I tell people, if the doctor says you're doing this for money or why you're filing, the answer should be, I wish I could feel better. I can't do the things I was doing. I can't be with my friends, and never answer that question. No matter how many times that's asked, avoid answering it and go on to something about how your life is being ruined now.
Yeah. My poor husband hears that all day long, that, I wish I could do this, wish we could go out to dinner. It's just the even getting in the car and just going for a ride it just doesn't work anymore.
Right. What you have to do now is wait for that decision. Did you ask them to send a copy of that report to your doctor?
Yes, I signed a release for that.
Okay. There's a 50% chance they'll actually do it. They
Oh,
usually
okay.
forget. But
Okay.
wait and see. You had the exam last week. Once they get that exam, it goes to their medical examiners who sit in the state agency office and review things. They used to get paid by the hour, and now they get paid by the case they review. So they review about 6 times as many cases per hour and don't do as good a job of it.
Right.
Do you know if your physicians have sent in their records?
Like my medical records,
Yes.
honestly, I don't know. My primary care physician's office, they're not the best at it. I have to stay on top of them. We use an electronic charting system here in West Virginia. So I've made copies of all of my office notes and test results. And I actually, after my exam last week with the internist, I drove to the Social Security office and I dropped those off in person to make sure they had them.
That was at your local office, though, right?
Yes. Yes, my local office.
They may or may not get it in your file to let the people making the decision read it.
Okay.
Did you have an address in London, Kentucky, or a barcode to send records with?
Yeah, it had a barcode on it. And she did tell me that my worker was not in that office, that she sends it along to him.
Okay, well, that's good. How about your spine specialist? Do you have their records?
Just the MRI report, because I had only seen them once, and that's when he ordered the MRI, which I had just had.
I would get the office notes from that first visit and also file those, because otherwise they're going to say she hasn't seen a specialist.
Okay.
Or what frequently happens is we never got the records from Dr. So-and-so, and those records are floating around in the Social Security cloud somewhere, and it didn't catch up to your file.
Right.
Right. And I know like a good question too, because I know that the neurosurgeon, his recommendation was physical therapy for my neck and my spine, which is fine. I've done that before with no change. I get it. I have to do it again. But if he recommends things like injections or surgery, I don't have to do that if I don't feel comfortable with that, right? That's
You
not
don't
like a
have to do it.
requirement to get disability.
No, one of the best yeah, if you have carpal tunnel and you refuse it, they can say you're not entitled to disability. Spine surgery is a big deal. And
Yeah.
one of the best things I ever heard was from a very famous spine surgeon who tried to avoid operating on everybody. And he would always tell people who came to him wanting surgery, you can never undo surgery.
Right.
If you try everything possible before you have surgery because you can't undo it.
Yeah.
So,
I haven't heard too many success stories. Most of them are, I went through this, I went through that, I went through this, and now I'm worse. So
right.
I don't want to go through any more. I couldn't imagine being in any more agony every day.
Injections sometimes work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. Who's next?
Whitney, I want to thank you for joining. Please keep us up to date here at the Disability Digest. We're praying for a initial approval. Then we can, if you're a member here, we can adjust your membership to help
Okay.
you understand what you need to do if you're approved. But if you're not approved, unfortunately, then we can help you with the lesson in our disability approval course that will help you understand how to file your reconsideration if you want to do it on your own or have somebody help you. All right.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Happy
Bye
holidays.
now.
Thank you so
You
much
too.
for being the first one joining.
You're welcome.
Yes.
You have to send Whitney a certificate.
Right on. Make sure contact our support desk with your email address.
Okay, will do.
Or at the Disability Digest. Just say I was the first.
I
All
was
right.
the first. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Next is LT times 22. Not sure.
Looks like an algebra problem.
Right.
Somebody coming up there?
I think so. LT at X22. Can you hear us? All right. There could be some technical difficulties if they're not familiar with using Zoom.
Hello.
Oh, there you are. Perfect timing.
Hi, it's
I appreciate it.
it's actually Jay. I've spoken to you before.
Is it Jay like Jay?
Yeah, I go by that.
All right, Jay, welcome. How can we help you?
Well, I successfully went through a CDR about a year and a half ago, but first they sent me the short form and then the long form. And I see like 20 plus doctors, specialists over this time period. I go to the doctor like 75 to 100 times a year for pain management and so forth. I had an acoustic neuroma tumor that severed the facial nerve, so I have.
I remember you.
So the question is, when I get to the short form CDR and there's only like 3 conditions to put down, that doesn't capture all my disabilities. And when an aggregate, it makes it more compelling. So what do I do with the short form?
Add a page with all the other conditions.
Yeah, I did that the first time and they still sent me the long form thereafter.
You had a case manager who didn't understand how to read everything.
Okay, because actually I added like 10 pages because all the listing of doctors and conditions. And with the short form, should I also give like the SSA form where the doctors sign the disabilities and all your limitations and so forth? I can get those. The short
You
form.
might as well if you can get them.
Did I see like 20 okay. Plus doctors? So then the thing is just list every doctor, list every condition, list the first time, the last time you saw them, and add as many additional pages as needed.
Correct.
Any other ideas, suggestions?
Jim, I have a question. If Jay sent a short form, fills it out and sends it back, then they turn around and send a long form, is there any benefit in just resending the short form again?
No,
No.
because he's been singled out for some unknown reason that they want the long form, so you have to fill it out.
Okay.
But that reminds me of one other important thing for people. Sometimes when you're talking to somebody from Social Security, either filling out a form claim on the phone or talking to them later, and they want to know your doctors, and you might tell them 3 doctors and they'll say that's enough. Don't let them do that. Tell them you want to tell them all your doctors.
Mm-hmm.
You want to get everything in there, because if they say that's enough, they're not going to get all your medical. And that doesn't mean that's enough to approve your claim. It just means they're getting evaluated based on how many cases they did this week, and they want to get off the phone with you.
Okay.
Okay, because the
Don't let
last
them do
time
that.
with the doctors listed and so forth, since there were like so many, like 20 plus in the long form, I didn't send in any medical records, but they said they contacted all the doctors. Since I have like multiple MRIs and CAT scans over these, it'll be 2.5 year period for the next one coming up or whatever. Should I just keep just giving the doctor's name, number, fax, and so forth, or get the medical records? Because we'd be talking thousands of pages of medical records.
Are you in a
Not-
state where you don't have to pay for medical records?
I'm in Florida, if that.
I don't know if you have to pay for records or not. If you have to pay for the records, let them get them. If you can get the records for free, request them, say these are for a Social Security disability case, and they'll send you the records for free then. I don't know the rule for Florida.
Okay, I did that like last time. I gathered a bunch of records and I took them to the local SSA office, like the previous person, and they're just like, "Oh, we can't take them." It's just
Really?
not at the. Yeah.
If they tell you they can't take them, ask to see the manager.
Okay.
They have. I one time brought 16,000 pages of records on a reconsideration to the local office that I didn't like, and they were unhappy with me, but they had to take them.
Good. Jay, how old are you? Remind me. I think you're young.
53.
Oh, no, you're not young. That's really odd
No.
ways to go through all that.
But you'll get reviewed once more after this time.
Yeah.
Okay, because at first I got reviewed for the initial CDR short form like February 22, and then the long form didn't come until like November of 22.
Mm-hmm.
And then it took like a year from that point even to find out.
Mm-hmm.
So should I be expecting one in the next few months? Short. That'll be 3 years from February.
There's a new commissioner. They're going to be changing the rules. So I don't know.
Yeah. But
I don't
I
want to
would
hold
like
you up.
for you to keep us updated, Jay. Let us know how it goes. I know you're concerned about it. I appreciate you contacting us and Attorney Brown giving you some insight.
No, I really appreciate everything you guys do because you put me on the right track and help me make it through the first long-term form. So thank you all very much. Have
You're
a great
very
day.
welcome.
Sure thing.
You're very welcome. All right.
Bye-bye.
Who's next?
So I want to pivot a bit. I know Philip has some questions that are lined up, and then I want to make sure we touch on it. We don't have anybody queued to come in the room at this moment. So now's the perfect time, Philip.
Okay, first one. This one is a disabled vet. It says, finally got a hearing date in Texas. Do they still consider VA 100% P&T expedited process at this point as well?
Depends which hearing office you're at.
Okay. I'm sure this is in here, but I can't find it. What does it mean when your medical appointment gets canceled by Social Security and they move it to step 4?
Well, that's a good one.
It often means nothing. I get a lot of appointments that are canceled, and then the next week somebody gets another one saying, we've rescheduled your appointment. Here's the date for the new one. And then they'll cancel it and reschedule it a third time. I've had cases that have gone to step 4 and then gone back to step 2 and then back to 3 and then back to 2. So the steps mean nothing. They said they have to keep people advised of where they are in the processing. So they do it, but it jumps around.
Mhm.
So don't take it seriously.
Welcome to the world of unpredictable Social Security disability application. Okay, what's next, Philip?
All right, next one. I had a phone screening with a psychiatrist this morning for an evaluation. She said, should hear back in 3 to 4 weeks. I'm in the middle of review stage. Does this mean my medical review is finalized?
The doctors who do the exams for Social Security have no idea how long it's going to take. That doctor may get the report to Social Security in 3 days. It then goes to the case manager who reviews it. It then has to go to the medical department at the Disability Determination Service. Depending on their backlog, it may get reviewed in a week, it may get reviewed in 2 months. The doctor who reviews it may say there's enough to grant or deny benefits, or may say, okay, we've got this psych eval, but we need a physical evaluation too, because there's other problems we need to evaluate. So don't believe the doctor who examined you about how long it will take, because they're one cog in a machine. They're in their own silo and they don't know what anybody else does.
Okay, good point.
All right, one more here. This comes from Stephanie. She says, just received a phone call from my law office. I was just denied an appeals counsel. My lawyer wants to go to federal court and start a new claim. Would this be advisable?
Yes. If you go to federal court, you're appealing the denial and trying to get all of your past due benefits. By filing a new claim, you're saying, I'm disabled and start me over. They might grant benefits on the new claim starting with August of this year. That will at least give you some income now while the appeal of the past due benefits is going on. So that was good advice.
Yeah, that's a super point, because a lot of people don't get the fact that you can, once you leave that appeals council decision, right?
Yes.
You then have the ability to go after both. Good point.
Right.
Yeah.
And she's lucky she has a lawyer that will go to federal court. A lot of people won't go to federal court and they just leave you in limbo then.
Yeah. Yeah. I call it specialized work for,
Right.
you know, the Carls of the world.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Nadine, I expect you have some more, but
Yeah.
I'm looking at the queue of questions here, Jim, and I just want to see if I can address like a variety of questions about the potential of benefits with one kind of comment statement, and see if you can kind of validate it. The concern for benefits being reduced, different aspects of the disability benefit world. Right now, we are changing administration. There hasn't been anything new put in place. So, I mean, there isn't anything that can really be determined right now as to what might happen. Is that a correct assessment?
That's the correct assessment. There's predictions,
Yeah.
but I mean the nominee for commissioner wants to privatize Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
It would be at least 5 or 6 years before that affects anybody receiving benefits.
Mm-hmm.
They will tell you that it's not going to affect anybody receiving benefits, but it will, because eventually if they privatize, they'll have less money going into Social Security, which means the government would be responsible for paying out. And then they're going to say, we won't pay these entitlements. Social Security isn't an entitlement. When they take that money out of your paycheck, they're making a contract with you to pay money when you need it, whether it's disability, retirement, survivor's benefits should you die and you have leave young children or a disabled spouse. They've made a contract with you to pay you. It's not an entitlement. But if we privatize, all of a sudden the money going into the Social Security fund isn't going in anymore. So it's not there. Secondly, if we privatize, right now the money going into Social Security is loaned as it's loaned to Social Security, or it's loaned to the federal government to build bridges, build roads, do things like that. If we stop paying that money in, they're going to have to raise taxes to get the money to take care of that. So privatization sounds nice. Privatization is really a way to try and get rid of Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way to do away with it in the long term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're at an interesting time. So the best advice you have for people that are concerned is?
If your U.S. representative or U.S. senator has a town hall, go to it and say to them, what are you going to do to protect Social Security? And if they say privatize it, say, what are you going to do to pay the people who are on it or who are going to be on it soon, because you're not going to be getting money into the Social Security fund anymore.
Yeah.
And most of them that say they want to privatize it don't have an answer to the second question.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you need to put them on the spot and let them know you're concerned, because if enough people let them know they're concerned, they won't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having said that, they're not using Social Security funds properly.